Normally, I find that Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks that try to do a lot just might fumble a bit here and there, at least on a thing or two. And who can blame them? These aren't massive for-profit productions, they're fan-made passion projects. Yet despite that, there are games that don't just nail it, but nearly perfect everything they attempt to do. And in my opinion, Pokemon Saiph 2 is one of those FireRed ROM hacks. But how exactly does it improve upon its predecessors? And is it a game that you want to play if you haven't played Saiph 1 or SORS? Let's check out all that Saiph 2 has to offer and find out. If you had any complaints about Pokemon Saiph or Pokemon SORS, the first two GBA ROM hack games of the Vytroverse, all of those issues have been quelled with Saiph 2. Not only does Saiph 2 hugely improve upon the two games that preceded it, but it does so much more to put itself in the upper echelons of Pokemon fan projects. Vytron's awesome direction and city maps, along with Skelly's complete FireRed upgrade engine, are a match made in heaven. But let's start from the beginning before getting into the deep weeds on this one. Saiph 2 is, big surprise incoming, a sequel to Pokemon Saiph. But as you can see from the smaller text on the title screen, it's also number 3 in the ongoing Vytroverse series, as created primarily by Vytron. And man, has Vytron really stepped up his game with this release. Following the events of the last two entries, we open on Micah, the protagonist of Saiph 1, alongside his hyper-animate friend Darlow, on a plane ride gone horribly wrong. We awaken in the Regress region, anyway, without any of our main party, and must begin a new Pokemon journey to find our previously used Pokemon, Darlow, and eventually save the region from a returning threat, this time with all new stakes at play. The story is a massive step up from what came before it and honestly makes for a highly entertaining journey. It really feels like playing through an episodic anime, with new characters with fun personalities and distinct designs being introduced and incorporated into the narrative in cool ways. My favorite character is probably Olene, but I also like the time traveler Cena. Getting your old Pokemon team back isn't just a substitute for a lack of gym challenges, it's so that you also now have access to HMs, now called field moves, in the menu. This system shakes things up both structurally and also remedies the problems of HMs. It's super smooth. And it's story focused, so Micah isn't arbitrarily completing the gym challenges, he's just moving from objective to new objective, like he would in the context of this story. Going back to the story itself, there's twists and turns, big revelations, and so many of the problems I had with stories from the previous Vytroverse games are gone, replaced with quality dialogue, pacing, and events. No corny romances, overly edgy dialogue, or tropey characters here. This is a genuinely interesting story that has character development for our main protagonist and, I really can't even believe this, but political themes that aren't painfully annoying or preachy. The only thing edgy that's left is the character designs, and honestly, I really like them all, more than even some modern official Pokemon character designs. I am quite honestly floored with the care and attention to craft that went into the story for Saiph 2, all while still feeling like it's an appropriate game for kids and young adults to play. Sure, spoiler alert, we are recycling the villain Shinao from Saiph 1, but because of that, we get a villain that has already developed a relationship with Micah, meaning the further development they get to have is all the more interesting. Even at the most casual playthrough level, the story of Saiph 2 is genuinely good and is probably the best I've played, maybe just edging out the story from Pokemon Unbound. Not only this, but you could probably play this game without having played Saiph 1 or SORS, and you could still very much follow along just fine. You just know that you're a champion from another region, have a friend, crash in a mysterious way, and are on a quest to figure everything out. Though if you have played the previous Vytroverse games, the story does indeed have more appeal, and it hits pretty solid. But this game isn't just a decent script for a Pokemon game, it's a well-designed game overall, having a great flow of events and environments to explore, all that weave together well to create a smooth experience. Regress is an awesome region with cool routes and beautifully designed cities. Like seriously, the tile sets for these towns are just gorgeous. Pudeti Bay, I think, is just freaking amazing. Everything looks great at night too, with Saiph 2's day and night system. It's just one of the many features that it has going on. You have access to Dex Nav, randomizer options, experience all options, level scaling, a hero and a vigilante mode, which are basically just higher difficulty options, mystery gift Pokemon, easier EV training, nature changing. It's insane. Soaring and diving make a return, and new to this game is the regression forms, which, let's just be honest, are basically Mega Evolution forms, except with some that are non-canon, like this Mega Typhlosion, which, by the way, has a pretty sweet design.
And there's Flygon, too. Got a new look.
In Pokemon SORS, I had an issue with the side quest system. Here in Saiph 2, it's remedied perfectly. You don't have to abandon an old side quest to take on new ones anymore. And the side quests here are great too, with some decent rewards that make the quests worth seeing through, even though I didn't clear all of them. I have to admit, I really like the character portraits for this game as well. They're really charming, and they're almost exactly like the character portraits that we used to have in Pokemon X and Y. I made it through my playthrough with an electro-balling Electrode, a regressing starter Swampert, a shadow-sneaking Banette, an air-slashing Unpheasant, a flare-blitzing Darmanitan, and a leech-seeding Appleton. The variety of Pokemon is fantastic, with a great selection of critters from generations 1 to 8. One last thing to note is the amount of Sonic music repurposed for a Pokemon Game Boy Advance sound font. It's especially nostalgic for me. Finally, after completing the story, you get access to a Battle Frontier section and some interesting post-game content to wrap it all up. The theme of Saiph 2 is actually pretty interesting, as it examines the question of corruptible authority, albeit briefly and not as if it's an exercise in philosophical storytelling, mind you. What happens when the agencies that establish the laws of the land become corrupt? That's what happens to Regress with Shinau's takeover. Shinau even asks Micah at one point why he and his friends don't just leave and let him take over Regress, as Micah doesn't even live there. But obviously, it's the morally right thing to do to work to stop those who wish to dominate and impose unjust control over innocent people. One has to defend the good within society. Saiph 2 is just great fun. Really, it feels like it's becoming its own Vytroverse thing, and also a highly refined Pokemon experience. Is there still a bit too much backtracking? Sure, but having these needs to report back to Aspen makes it easy to get back into Saiph 2 after a potential break. Granted, you can always check what the main objective is through the menu system, so... Well, anyway, maybe Vytron can look to avoid the need for as much backtracking in SORS 2, which already has a tech demo out, by the way. Pretty excited for that, not gonna lie. So, if you haven't played Pokemon Saiph 2 yet, you absolutely must. It's a fantastic game, and you don't even need to have played the previous 2 games to get into it. I'm excited to see what's next for Micah, and what's next for the Vytroverse. Keep on cooking, Vytron. You and your collaborators are only getting better and better.